The cold metal bench felt like ice against Maria's back as she sat outside Tony's diner on 4th Street. It was almost midnight, and the neon sign above her head kept flickering on and off, casting strange shadows on the empty sidewalk. The stomach hadn't stopped hurting for 3 whole days now. That empty, gnawing feeling that made her feel dizzy and weak. She pulled her thin jacket tighter around her shoulders and watched the people inside the warm restaurant. Young Kids was sharing a big plate of fries. Father was laughing at something his daughter said. The mother was cutting up food for the little boy. They looked so happy, so normal. Maria couldn't remember the last time she felt that way. Just 2 months ago, everything had been different. She had her own small apartment on Maple Street. It wasn't fancy, but it was hers. She had a job at the department store downtown, folding clothes and helping customers. The pay wasn't great, but it was enough to cover her rent and buy groceries. She even had a little money left over each month to go to the movies sometimes. But then, the store closed down. Owner said business was too slow. One day, Maria went to work, and there was a big sign on the door that said closed permanently. Just like that, her job was gone. She tried to find another one right away. She filled out applications everywhere. Fast food places, grocery stores, gas stations. But everyone said the same thing. We'll call you if something opens up. Nobody ever called. The bills kept coming, though. First, she couldn't pay her electric bill. Then her phone got cut off. She sold her TV, her laptop, even some of her clothes, to get money for food, but it wasn't enough. Soon, she was behind on rent. Her landlord, Mr. Peterson, was nice at first. He said he understood and gave her extra time. But after 6 weeks, even he ran out of patience. The day they put her stuff on the sidewalk was the worst day of her life. She watched strangers pick through her belongings like they were shopping at a yard sale. Her favorite books, her grandmother's photo, the coffee mug her college roommate had given her for her birthday. Everything that made her feel like she belonged somewhere was suddenly scattered on the street. For a while, she slept in her old car. It was a beat-up Honda that barely ran, but at least it had a roof and doors that locked. She would park in different places each night so nobody would bother her. The back seat wasn't comfortable, but she was grateful to have somewhere to go. She kept thinking things would get better. She would find a job soon. This was just temporary. But then her car got towed. She had parked it in the same spot for too many days in a row, and the city took it away. When she went to get it back, they wanted $600. $600 she didn't have. She stood in that government office and cried right in front of the clerk. The woman behind the counter looked embarrassed and said she was sorry, but there was nothing she could do. That was 2 days ago. Since then, Maria had been walking around the city with just her backpack. Inside was everything she owned now. 2 changes of clothes, a toothbrush, some old photos, and about $3 in coins. She had spent her last real money on a small bag of chips yesterday morning. The chips were long gone, and the coins weren't enough for a real meal. She had tried calling her sister Linda, but Linda lived 3 states away, and they hadn't talked in over a year. Their last conversation had been an argument about something stupid. Maria was too proud to beg for help, and Linda had her own problems. Anyway, she had 2 kids and a husband who couldn't keep a job. They were probably struggling too. The shelter downtown had a long waiting list. Maria had gone there this morning, but they said she had to come back tomorrow and hope someone didn't show up. The soup kitchen was only open on Wednesdays and Saturdays. Today was Tuesday. The food bank required an address, which she didn't have anymore. She looked at the people in the diner again. A businessman was sitting alone at a corner table, typing on his laptop while he ate his dinner. He looked successful, well-dressed. His coat probably cost more than Maria used to make in a week. He had ordered a big meal, a burger, fries, and a piece of pie. He was eating slowly, like he wasn't even hungry. Like food was just something you did, not something you dreamed about. Maria's stomach cramped again. She bent over slightly and pressed her hand against her side. The pain was getting worse. She had heard that you could go a long time without food, but she had never felt anything like this before. It scared her. What if she got really sick? What if she passed out on the street? Who would help her? She stood up and walked closer to the diner window. The warm air inside looked so inviting. She could smell the food even through the glass. Burgers cooking on the grill, fresh bread, coffee. Her mouth started watering, and she felt ashamed of herself. When had she become this person? When had she become someone who stood outside restaurants, staring at other people's food? The businessman looked up from his computer and saw her watching him. For a moment, their eyes met through the window. Maria felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment. She turned away quickly and walked back to the bench. But she could still feel him looking at her. She sat down and put her head in her hands. This couldn't be her life. This couldn't be who she was becoming. Just a few months ago, she had plans. She was going to save money and maybe take some classes at the community college. She wanted to learn computer skills so she could get a better job. She had dreams of having a nice apartment someday, maybe even a car that actually worked properly. Now she couldn't even afford a sandwich. She couldn't remember the last time she felt full, the last time she felt safe, the last time she felt like a normal person instead of someone that others looked away from when they passed on the street. The diner would be closing soon. She could see the waitress starting to clean up. The businessman was still there, but he was the only customer left. Maria looked at him again. He seemed kind, somehow. Not like the type of person who would be cruel to someone who was down on their luck. A terrible thought started forming in her mind. It was the kind of thought that made her feel sick, but she couldn't push it away. She had been walking around the city for 2 days, and she had seen things. She had seen what some people did when they got desperate enough. She had always told herself she would never ever consider something like that, but now, her grandmother used to say that nobody knows what they're capable of until they're pushed to their limit. Maria had never understood what that meant before. Now she did. When you're hungry enough, when you're scared enough, when you feel like you're disappearing from the world and nobody cares, you start thinking about things you never thought you would think about. She looked at the businessman one more time. He was closing his laptop, getting ready to leave. This was her chance. Maybe her only chance. She didn't know if she could actually go through with it, but she had to try something. She couldn't spend another night on the street with nothing to eat. She couldn't keep living like this. Maria stood up slowly. Her legs felt shaky, whether from hunger or fear, she couldn't tell. She walked toward the diner door, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. She had no idea what she was going to say. She had no idea if this would work. She just knew that she had to try. As she reached for the door handle, she caught her reflection in the glass. She barely recognized herself. Her hair was messy, her clothes were wrinkled, and she looked tired in a way that sleep couldn't fix. But behind all of that, she was still Maria. She was still the girl who had worked her way through high school, who had gotten her own apartment, who had tried so hard to build a decent life. Maybe this man would see that too. Maybe he would understand that she wasn't a bad person, just someone who had run out of options. Maybe he would be kind. She pushed open the door and stepped inside, not knowing that this moment would change everything. The warm air inside the diner hit Maria's face like a gentle hug. For a moment, she just stood there breathing it in. The smell of coffee and grilled food made her stomach twist with hunger, but also gave her a strange comfort. This was what normal life smelled like. This was what she had been missing. The businessman looked up from his laptop as she walked toward his table. His eyes were kind, not the cold stare she had expected. He was probably in his late 30s, with dark hair that was starting to show gray at the sides. His clothes were nice, but not flashy. He wore a simple black sweater and jeans, nothing too expensive looking. There was something gentle about his face that made Maria feel a little less scared. "Excuse me," she said, her voice barely louder than a whisper. Her hands were shaking, and she clasped them together to try to stop it. "I'm sorry to bother you, but I was wondering if maybe you might want some company tonight." The words came out all wrong. She had practiced what she would say while walking to the door, but now everything sounded jumbled and desperate. She felt her cheeks burning with shame. She couldn't look at him directly. David Chen looked at the young woman standing beside his table. She was thin, too thin, and her clothes hung loose on her small frame. Her hair needed washing, and there were dark circles under her eyes. But what struck him most was the way she held herself, like she was trying to disappear. like she expected him to be angry with her. "I'm sorry," Maria continued quickly. No, this is weird, but I haven't eaten in 3 days, and I was thinking maybe we could help each other out." She hated herself for saying it, but the words kept coming. "I'm not asking for much, just enough for a meal. I'm clean, I promise. I just need something to eat." David closed his laptop slowly. He had volunteered at the downtown shelter for 2 years now, ever since his wife had passed away. He had seen this look before, the look of someone who had run out of choices, the look of someone who was about to do something they never thought they would do just to survive. "When did you last eat?" he asked quietly. Maria blinked in surprise. That wasn't the response she had expected. She thought he would either say yes or no, or maybe tell her to go away. She hadn't expected him to ask about her as a person. "Sunday morning," she said. "I had some chips, but before that, it was Saturday night. I found a half-eaten sandwich in a trash can outside the mall." She immediately regretted telling him about the sandwich. It made her sound pathetic. David felt something twist in his chest. Sunday morning. It was Tuesday night now. This girl hadn't had a real meal in almost 3 days. He thought about his own dinner, how he had eaten slowly while working, not even really tasting the food. How he had almost left half the burger on his plate. "Sit down," he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. Maria hesitated. "I don't want to take up your time. I just thought maybe we could go somewhere and—" "Sit down," he repeated, but gently, "please." She sat on the edge of the chair, ready to run if he changed his mind. She kept looking toward the door, planning her escape route. It felt too easy, too good to be true. Men like him didn't usually want to just talk to girls like her. David waved to the waitress, a tired-looking woman with gray hair pulled back in a ponytail. "Can we get a menu over here, please?" The waitress looked at Maria with suspicious eyes, but she brought a menu anyway. David pushed it across the table. "Order whatever you want," he said. Maria stared at the menu like it was written in a foreign language. She hadn't looked at a restaurant menu in months. All the options seemed overwhelming. Burgers, sandwiches, pasta, soup. Things she had forgotten people could just order and eat whenever they wanted. "I don't understand," she said. "What do you want from me?" David looked at her carefully. She was younger than he had first thought, maybe early 20s. There was something about her that reminded him of his wife when she was sick. That same fragile quality, like she might break if someone spoke too loudly. "I want you to eat," he said simply. "That's all. But why? You don't even know me. Do I need to know you to see that you're hungry?" Maria felt tears starting to form in her eyes. She tried to blink them away, but they kept coming. Nobody had been kind to her in so long. The last few weeks, people had looked at her like she was invisible, or worse, like she was dangerous. Store clerks watched her suspiciously. People crossed the street when they saw her coming. Even at the shelter, everyone was so tired and overwhelmed. That kindness felt like a luxury nobody could afford. "I'm not a bad person," she said, her voice breaking. "I know I look terrible, and I know what I just asked you sounds awful, but I'm not usually like this. I had a job. I had an apartment. I was doing okay until everything fell apart." "I believe you," David said. The waitress came back with her pen ready. "What can I get you folks?" David looked at Maria encouragingly. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand and looked at the menu again. Everything looked good, but she didn't want to order something too expensive. She didn't want to take advantage of his kindness. "Could I have the soup?" she asked. "And maybe some bread?" "Which soup?" the waitress asked. "Any soup. It doesn't matter." David shook his head. "Bring her the meatloaf dinner with mashed potatoes and vegetables and a glass of milk and some of that apple pie for dessert." "I can't eat all that," Maria protested. "Then you'll take the rest with you," David said. "When did you last have a real meal? A hot meal that someone cooked for you?" Maria thought about it. "Before I lost my job, I used to make pasta at home sometimes, or heat up frozen dinners. I wasn't a great cook, but I could make basic stuff." "What kind of work did you do?" "I worked at Henderson's department store. I helped customers and organized the clothing sections. I was good at it." I liked helping people find things that made them feel good about themselves. She paused. Store closed down 2 months ago. The owner said business was too slow. David nodded. He had heard similar stories at the shelter. Good people who had worked hard, but lost their jobs when companies closed or moved away. People who had never expected to need help, who had always been able to take care of themselves. What's your name? He asked. Maria Santos. David Chen. The food arrived faster than Maria had expected. The meatloaf was thick and covered in brown gravy. The mashed potatoes were creamy and buttery. The vegetables were bright green and orange, cooked just right. It was the kind of meal her grandmother used to make on Sundays when Maria was little. She took a small bite, then another. The flavors were so rich and satisfying that she almost started crying again. She had forgotten what it felt like to taste real food, to feel full and satisfied. Slow down, David said gently. It's not going anywhere. But Maria couldn't slow down. Her body was desperate for nutrition, for energy, for the simple pleasure of eating. She ate quickly but quietly, embarrassed by her hunger but unable to control it. David watched her eat and felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Purpose. For the past 2 years, since his wife died, he had been going through the motions of living. Work, eat, sleep, repeat. He volunteered at the shelter because it felt like the right thing to do, but he hadn't felt truly connected to anyone in so long. Tell me about yourself, he said. Before all this happened, what did you want to do with your life? Maria looked up from her plate. I wanted to go back to school. I finished high school, but I never went to college. Was thinking about taking some computer classes at the community college. I wanted to learn how to build websites, maybe work for a tech company someday. That's a good goal. Those are useful skills. It seems stupid now, Maria said. I can't even afford food, let alone college classes. It's not stupid. It's something to work toward. They talked while Maria ate. She told him about growing up in foster care, about how she had worked since she was 16 to support herself, about the small apartment she had loved, and how proud she had been to live independently, about her dreams of maybe finding her real family someday, or at least building a family of her own. David told her about his work as a consultant, helping small businesses improve their computer systems, about his wife, who had died of cancer 2 years ago, about how volunteering at the shelter had helped him deal with his grief. Why do you help people? Maria asked. David thought for a moment. 'Cause someone helped me once when I needed. At most, not with money or food, but with hope. After my wife died, I didn't think I'd ever feel human again. A counselor at the hospital told me that the best way to heal was to help others heal. She was right. When Maria finished eating, David asked the waitress to box up the leftover pie. He also ordered a sandwich to go and a bottle of water. 4. Later, he explained to Maria, in case you get hungry tonight. He paid the bill and walked with her toward the door. Outside, the cold air hit them both, but Maria felt different now, stronger, like she could face whatever came next. Thank you, she said. You don't know what this means to me. David pulled a business card from his wallet. I have a small office downtown. If you want to come by tomorrow morning, maybe we can talk about finding you some work. Nothing permanent. Just something to help you get back on your feet. Maria stared at the card. You would do that? Why? Maria sat on the steps of the public library at 7 in the morning, holding David's business card between her fingers. She had been awake all night, not because she was cold or hungry for once, but because she couldn't stop thinking about what had happened. The leftover pie was still in her backpack, carefully wrapped. She had eaten half of it around midnight, saving the rest for breakfast. Part of her wanted to throw the card away and pretend last night never happened. Nice things didn't happen to people like her. Men who helped strange women without wanting anything in return only existed in movies. Real life was harder than that. Real life was getting kicked out of your apartment and sleeping in your car until that got taken away too. But another part of her, it's the part that had been quiet for so long, was whispering that maybe this was different. Maybe David really was just a kind person who wanted to help. Maybe she deserved something good to happen to her after all the bad. She looked at the card again. David Chen, technology consultant. There was a phone number and an address downtown. The address was only 6 blocks away. She could walk there. In 15 minutes, if she decided to go, at 8:30, she finally made the call from the payphone outside the library. Her hands were shaking as she dialed the number. The phone rang 3 times before David answered. Double quotes, "Hello, this is David." "Hi, it's Maria, from last night, at the diner." She paused, waiting for him to remember her, or maybe tell her he had changed his mind. "Maria, I'm glad you called. How are you feeling this morning?" "Better. Thank you for the food, and for being so kind to me. Would you like to have breakfast? There's a coffee shop near my office. We could talk about some work possibilities." Maria felt her heart skip. He really meant it. He hadn't just been trying to get rid of her last night. "Are you sure?" "I don't want to be a bother." "You're not a bother. Can you meet me at Corner Caf on 5th Street in 20 minutes? "Yes, I'll be there." She hung up the phone and looked at her reflection in the library window. Her hair was still messy, and her clothes were wrinkled from sleeping in them. But she had washed her face in the library bathroom and brushed her teeth. She looked tired, but not as broken as she had felt yesterday. The coffee shop was warm and busy with people heading to work. Maria spotted David at a corner table, reading a newspaper and drinking coffee, looked up and smiled when he saw her, gesturing for her to sit down. "How did you sleep?" he asked. Maria didn't want to tell him she had spent the night on a bench. "In the park? I slept okay. Thank you for asking." A waitress came over with a menu. David ordered eggs and toast and encouraged Maria to get whatever she wanted. She chose pancakes and orange juice, still amazed that someone was willing to buy her food again. "So tell me more about your work experience," David said once they had ordered. "You mentioned you worked at the department store for a while." 2 years. I started part-time while I was finishing high school, then went full-time after I graduated. I was good at helping customers find what they needed. I liked organizing the displays and keeping everything neat." Maria paused. "I know it wasn't an important job, but I took it seriously." "Any job done well is important," David said. "What about before that?" Maria hesitated. Her past wasn't something she liked talking about. But David had been honest with her about his wife, about his own struggles. Maybe she could trust him with her story. "I grew up in foster care," she said quietly. "My parents died in a car accident when I was 8. I lived with different families until I turned 18. Some were nice, some weren't. I learned to take care of myself pretty early." David nodded, not looking shocked or pitying, just listening. "I worked at a grocery store during high school, bagging groceries and stocking shelves. I saved up enough money to get my own apartment right after graduation. I was so proud of that apartment. It was tiny, but it was mine." She felt her voice getting emotional. "I never thought I'd end up back on the streets." "You're not back on the streets," David said firmly. "You're here, having breakfast with me, talking about your future. That's not the same thing." The food arrived, and Maria ate more slowly this time. She was still hungry, but not with the desperate hunger of yesterday. She could think clearly now, could have a real conversation. "What kind of work did you have in mind?" she asked. "I need someone to help organize my home office. I work from home most days, and my filing system is a mess. I have papers everywhere, old computer equipment that needs to be sorted, client files that need to be organized properly." He sipped his coffee. "It's not glamorous work, but it pays $15 an hour. And if you're interested in learning computer skills, I could teach you some basics while you work." Psh, Maria stared at him. "You would pay me $15 an hour just to organize papers. Good organization is worth more than you think. And I'd rather hire someone I trust than a stranger from an employment agency." "Wow. But you don't know if you can trust me." "We just met last night," David smiled. "I'm a pretty good judge of character. You were hungry and desperate last night, but you were also polite and honest. You could have made up some story about why you needed money, but you told me the truth, even though it was embarrassing. That tells me something about who you are." They talked for another hour. David explained that he had a small apartment above his garage that he used for storage. He could clean it out and let her stay there temporarily while she got back on her feet. Nothing fancy, Just a bed, a small kitchen, and a bathroom. But it would be warm and safe. "Why are you doing this?" Maria asked. "I mean, I'm grateful, but I don't understand why you want to help me so much." David was quiet for a moment. "After my wife died, I felt lost. I had been taking care of her for 3 years while she was sick, and when she was gone, I didn't know what to do with myself. I started volunteering at the homeless shelter because I needed something to focus on besides my grief." He stirred his coffee slowly. "I met a lot of people there who had stories like yours. Good people who had jobs and homes until something went wrong. A medical emergency, a job loss, a family crisis. I realized how thin the line is between having a stable life and losing everything. So you help people because you know it could happen to anyone. Partly. But also because my wife always said that love isn't just what you feel for your family. Real love is what you do for people who can't do anything for you in return." She used to volunteer at the children's hospital, reading to kids who were too sick to go to school. She said it made her feel more human. Maria felt tears in her eyes again. She sounds like she was a wonderful person. She was. She would have liked you. She always said you could tell someone's character by how they treat others when they're at their lowest point. You were at your lowest point last night, but you were still kind to me, still said please and thank you. I still treated me like a person, not just someone who might give you what you needed. They made plans for Maria to come to his house that afternoon. He would show her the office and the apartment. She could start work the next day if she felt comfortable with the arrangement. He gave her $40 for lunch and told her to buy some basic necessities at the dollar store. "I don't know how to thank you," Maria said as they stood up to leave. "You don't have to thank me. Just take care of yourself and work hard. That's all I ask." As they walked out of the coffee shop together, Maria felt something she hadn't felt in months. It felt like she had a future again. Not just surviving from day to day, but actually moving forward towards something better. David's house was in a quiet neighborhood with tree-lined streets and well-kept lawns. The garage apartment was small but clean, with a bed, a desk, a tiny kitchen, and a bathroom with a shower. Maria ran her hand along the clean sheets and couldn't believe this was going to be her space. "The office is in the main house," David explained. "You can work whatever hours are comfortable for you. You want to take breaks or need anything? Just let me know. Most important thing is that you feel safe and comfortable here." That evening, Maria sat in her new room, looking out the window at the sunset. She had taken a hot shower, her first in over a week. She had clean clothes from the thrift store and food in the small refrigerator. For the first time in months, she wasn't worried about where she would sleep or what she would eat tomorrow. She thought about David's wife, about her belief that love was what you did for people who couldn't help you in return. Maybe that was why this felt different from charity. David wasn't helping her because he pitied her. He was helping her because he believed she deserved help, simply because she was a human being. As she drifted off to sleep in a real bed, Maria made a promise to herself. She would work hard, save money, and get back on her feet. And someday, when she was stable again, she would find a way to help someone else the way David had helped her. She would pass on the kindness that had saved her life. 6 months had passed since that cold night outside the diner, and Maria barely recognized the person she had become. She stood in front of the bathroom mirror in her small apartment, getting ready for another day of work. Her hair was clean and shiny, cut in a neat style that framed her face. She had gained healthy weight, and her clothes fit properly now. But the biggest change was in her eyes. They weren't filled with fear and desperation anymore. They sparkled with confidence and purpose. Working for David had turned out to be more than just organizing files. He had been patient in teaching her computer skills, starting with basic programs and gradually moving to more advanced tasks. She was now helping him create websites for his clients and managing his scheduling system. She had even started taking online classes in web design, something that would have seemed impossible just months ago. "Maria, are you ready for the Henderson meeting?" David called from his office. "Almost done," she replied, grabbing her notebook and laptop. The Henderson meeting was with a small bakery owner who wanted to build an online ordering system.
Aria
Had designed the initial website layout, and today they would present it to the client. As they drove to the meeting, Maria felt a familiar flutter of nervousness mixed with excitement. 6 months ago, she couldn't have imagined sitting in a car as an equal partner in a business discussion. Now, David often asked for her opinions and trusted her to handle important parts of their projects. "You seem quiet today," David observed, as they stopped at a red light. "Just thinking about how different everything is now," Maria said. "Sometimes it feels like that night at the diner happened to someone else." David glanced at her with a smile. "That person is still you. You just had some help getting back to who you really are." The meeting went well. Mrs. Henderson loved Maria's website design, especially the bright colors and easy navigation. She hired them on the spot to build her online store. As they drove back to the house, Maria felt proud of what she had accomplished. "We make a good team," David said. "We do," Maria agreed, and she meant it. Working with David felt natural, like they understood each other's thoughts without having to explain everything. She had never experienced that kind of partnership before. That evening, they sat in David's kitchen, sharing takeout Chinese food. This had become their routine on successful project days. Maria had offered many times to cook, but David enjoyed their conversations over meals too much to change the tradition. "I got an email from the community college today," Maria said, twirling noodles around her chopsticks. "They accepted my application for the fall semester. I can start taking business classes in September." "That's wonderful news," David said, genuinely excited. "Are you nervous about going back to school?" "A little, but also excited. I never thought I'd have the chance to get a real education." She paused. "I've been thinking about something else, too. The shelter downtown where you volunteer. I'd like to help there if they'll have me." David looked surprised. "You want to volunteer at the shelter?" "I want to give back. You and the people at the shelter helped save my life, even though I never actually stayed there. I want to help other women who are going through what I went through." "I think that's a beautiful idea. Your story could give people hope." They talked about the volunteer program while they finished dinner. Maria felt comfortable sharing ideas with David now, something that had taken months to develop. In the beginning, she had been careful about everything she said, afraid of saying something wrong and losing his help. But David had never made her feel judged or stupid, even when she asked basic questions about things most people took for granted. After dinner, they moved to the living room to watch a movie, another part of their routine. Curled up in her favorite corner of the couch while David made popcorn. The room was cozy, filled with photos of David and his late wife, along with new pictures of David and Maria at various work events and volunteer activities. "David," Maria said during a quiet moment in the movie, "can I ask you something personal?" "Of course. Do you ever feel guilty about being happy again? About moving on from your grief?" David muted the television and turned to face her fully. It was a question he had been wrestling with himself lately. "Sometimes Rebecca was the love of my life for 12 years. When she died, I thought that part of my life was over forever. But now I've learned that the heart has more capacity than I thought. Missing her doesn't mean I can't care about other people. She would want me to be happy, to keep living fully." He paused. "Why do you ask?" Maria felt her cheeks warm. "Because I think I'm falling in love with you, and I don't know if that's okay." The words hung in the air between them. Maria immediately regretted being so direct, but she couldn't take it back now. She had been feeling this way for weeks, maybe months, but had been too afraid to acknowledge it, even to herself. David was quiet for a long moment, not because he was shocked, but because he was trying to find the right words. "Maria, I care about you deeply. More than I expected to when this all started," but she prompted, sensing there was more. "But I want to make sure your feelings are real and not just gratitude for helping you when you needed it most. I don't want you to think you owe me anything, including your heart." Maria shifted to face him directly. "Is that what you think this is? Gratitude? I don't know." "That's what we need to figure out." She took a deep breath. "When you helped me that first night, yes, I was grateful. When you gave me work and a place to live, I was grateful for that too. But David, what I feel for you now has nothing to do with what you've done for me. Then what is it? It's the way you listen when I talk about my dreams for the future. It's how you never make me feel stupid when I don't understand something. It's the way you laugh at my terrible jokes, and how You always save me the last piece of pizza even though I know it's your favorite. She smiled. It's how you talk about Rebecca with so much love that it makes me want to be the kind of person someone could love that deeply. David felt something shift in his chest. These weren't the words of someone who felt obligated to care. For him, these were the words of someone who saw him clearly and chose to love what she saw. I'm scared, he admitted. I'm scared of dishonoring Rebecca's memory. I'm scared of people thinking I'm taking advantage of you. I'm scared of losing what we have now if we try to be something more. I'm scared too, Maria said. I'm scared that I'm not good enough for someone like you. I'm scared that my past makes me damaged goods. I'm scared that if we try this and it doesn't work out, I'll lose the best friend I've ever had. They sat in silence for a while, both thinking about what they had just shared. The movie continued playing, but neither of them was paying attention to it anymore. What do we do? David asked finally. I don't know. But I do know that I'd rather be honest about how I feel than pretend these feelings don't exist. David reached over and took her hand. I care about you, Maria, more than I've cared about anyone since Rebecca died. You make me want to build a future again, instead of just surviving each day. Really? Really? You've brought joy back into my life in ways I didn't think were possible. When I see you getting excited about your college classes or talking about helping at the shelter, it reminds me what it feels like to have hope. Maria squeezed his hand. So what happens now? Now we take it slow. We see how we feel as we spend more time together, not as employer and employee, but as two people who care about each other. We don't rush anything, and we're honest about our feelings every step of the way. I'd like that, Maria said. And Maria? For what it's worth, I think Rebecca would like you. She always said that love isn't a competition where there's only room for one person in your heart. She said love multiplies when you share it. That night, as Maria lay in her bed thinking about their conversation, she felt a warmth in her chest. That had nothing to do with gratitude and everything to do with possibility. For the first time in her life, she was falling in love with someone who saw her as an equal, someone who valued her thoughts and dreams as much as his own. She thought about the journey that had brought her to this moment, from that desperate night outside the diner to this warm, safe place where love was growing slowly and naturally between two people who had both known loss and were ready to embrace hope again. 1 year later, Maria stood in front of the bathroom mirror at the downtown shelter, adjusting her volunteer name tag. It was Saturday morning, and she had been volunteering here every weekend for 6 months now. The woman looking back at her in the mirror was someone she still sometimes couldn't believe was real. Was confident, healthy, and genuinely happy. She had finished her first semester of college with straight A's and was now working toward a business degree. The web design business she ran with David was growing steadily, and they had hired 2 part-time employees. But more than any of these accomplishments, what made Maria proudest was the work she did here at the shelter. Maria, could you help me with the new intake forms? Called Janet, the shelter coordinator. We have 3 women checking in today, and one of them seems really scared. Of course, Maria replied, walking toward the front desk. She had learned that the first conversation with someone seeking help could make all the difference. Sometimes, people just needed to see that someone understood what they were going through. The scared woman was about Maria's age, thin and jumpy, clutching a small backpack like it contained everything important in her life, because it probably did. Maria recognized that look, that posture, that desperate attempt to seem invisible. Hi, I'm Maria, she said gently, sitting down across from the woman. What's your name? Lisa, the woman whispered. I wasn't sure if I should come here. I've never been to a place like this before, I understand. It takes courage to ask for help. Can you tell me a little about your situation? As Lisa shared her story, Maria felt her heart ache with recognition. Job loss, eviction, family who had given up on her. The same spiral that had led Maria to that diner a year ago. Instead of feeling helpless, Maria felt hopeful. No. She knew that situations like Lisa's could change. The important thing is that you're here now, Maria told her. You've taken the hardest step, which is deciding to get help. From here, things can get better. After helping Lisa get settled, Maria walked to the community room, where David was setting up chairs for the morning support group. He had started volunteering here regularly after Maria began working at the shelter. Watching him interact with people who were struggling had only deepened her love for him. "How's our new arrival?" David asked, arranging the last few chairs. "Scared but determined. She reminds me of myself a year ago," Maria smiled. "It's amazing how much can change in such a short time." "Speaking of change," David said, reaching into his pocket, "I have something for you." Maria looked at him curiously. It wasn't her birthday or any special occasion she could think of. David pulled out a small velvet box, and Maria's heart stopped. "David, what are you doing?" He got down on one knee right there in the shelter community room, surrounded by folding chairs and motivational posters. It wasn't romantic in a traditional sense, but it was perfect because it represented everything. Their relationship had been built on "Maria sent us," he said, opening the box to reveal a simple but beautiful ring. "You changed my life the night you walked into that diner, not just because you needed help, but because helping you showed me what love really means." Maria felt tears streaming down her face. "David, ... You taught me that love isn't just about finding someone to share your happiness with. It's about finding someone who makes you want to be better, someone who inspires you to make the world better. You've shown me that the best way to honor the love I had with Rebecca is to love again, fully and completely." Around them, some of the shelter residents had started to gather, watching with curious smiles. Maria barely noticed them. All she could see was David, looking at her with so much love that it took her breath away. "Will you marry me?" he asked. "Yes," she whispered, then louder. "Yes, of course yes." The small crowd that had gathered burst into applause and cheers. David slipped the ring onto her finger and stood up to kiss her. It was a kiss full of promise, of shared dreams, of two people who had found their way to each other through the darkest of circumstances. "I love you," Maria said against his lips. "I love you too, more than I ever thought possible." Later that evening, they sat in their favorite booth at Tony's diner, the same place where their story had begun. The owner, Tony, had become a friend over the past year, and when David had told him about the proposal plan, he had insisted on making them a special dinner. "So we're really doing this?" Maria said, admiring her ring in the diner's warm light. "We're really doing this. Are you ready to be Mrs. Chen?" "I'm ready for anything as long as it's with you." They talked about their wedding plans over dinner. They wanted something simple, surrounded by the people who mattered most to them. The shelter residents they had come to know, David's business, clients who had become friends, Maria's professors from college, and the few family members they were each in touch with. "I want to get married here," Maria said suddenly. "Here in the diner?" "Not exactly here. But I want the reception to be here. This place brought us together. Tony could cater it, and we could invite everyone we care about. It would be perfect." David smiled. "I love that idea. So perfectly us." Months later, on a beautiful spring afternoon, Maria walked down the aisle of a small chapel wearing a simple white dress that made her feel like a princess. But even more beautiful than the dress was the look on David's face when he saw her. Pure joy, pure love, pure amazement that this was their life now. The ceremony was small and heartfelt. David's vows talked about how Maria had taught him that love multiplies when you share it. Maria's vows talked about how David had shown her that she deserved to be loved exactly as she was. There wasn't a dry eye in the chapel. The reception at Tony's diner was unlike any wedding party anyone had ever attended. Tony had decorated the place with simple white flowers and string lights. The food was comfort food at its finest: burgers, fries, milkshakes, and a beautiful wedding cake. But what made it special was the mix of people celebrating together. Lisa, the woman Maria had helped at the shelter months ago, was there with her new job and apartment. Several other shelter residents attended, dressed in their best clothes and beaming with happiness for Maria and David. College professors mingled with business clients and longtime volunteers. "Celebration. Can I have everyone's attention?" David said, standing up with his glass raised. "A year and a half ago, my wife and I met in circumstances that neither of us could have predicted. Maria was at the lowest point of her life, and I was struggling to find meaning after losing someone I loved deeply." He looked at Maria, who was glowing with happiness. What we found together wasn't just love, but purpose. We found that when you help someone else heal, you heal yourself. When you choose to see the best in people, they start to see the best in themselves. So tonight, we're not just celebrating our marriage. We're celebrating the idea that everyone in this room has the power to change someone's life. It might be as simple as buying someone a meal when they're hungry, or as big as helping them rebuild their whole life. But every act of kindness matters. Maria stood up beside him. David and I have decided to use our wedding gifts to start a foundation. We want to help people who are experiencing homelessness, not just with temporary shelter, but with job training, education, support, and long-term housing assistance. The room erupted in applause. Several people immediately offered to volunteer or contribute to the foundation. As the evening wound down, Maria and David found themselves alone at their table, watching their friends and family continue to celebrate around them. "Do you ever think about that night?" Maria asked. "What would have happened if you had said no when I approached your table?" David took her hand. "I try not to think about that, but I will say this. I don't think it was an accident, that we found each other. I think some meetings are meant to happen. Do you think Rebecca would approve?" Maria asked, looking at the small photo of David's late wife that he always carried in his wallet, which was now sitting on the table. "I think she would love you. I think she would be proud of what we're building together." 3 years later, the Chen Foundation had helped over 200 people transition from homelessness to stable housing and employment. Maria had graduated from college with honors and was now running the foundation full-time. David continued his consulting business, but spent most of his time on foundation work. They had moved into a larger house with extra bedrooms for people who needed temporary housing while getting back on their feet. Their dining room table was always full of people sharing meals and stories and hope. On quiet evenings, Maria would sometimes walk past Tony's diner and remember that desperate night when she had nothing left to lose. She would think about how one moment of human kindness had changed everything, not just for her, but for all. The people they were now able to help because of their story. She had learned that love wasn't just what happened between two people. Real love was what you built together to make the world a little bit better. And every day she and David were building something beautiful.